Mr. President, we welcome about 1 million immigrants every year. We welcome them because they come here abiding by our laws, and we need immigrants, and we've been a welcoming country for a long time. But I come to the floor today to speak about the ongoing crisis at our southern border, a crisis that I think this administration doesn't want to admit as a crisis, and because of some changes in policy, we have that crisis. And that crisis is people entering our country in violation of our laws. Since taking office, this administration has advanced policies that undermine immigration enforcement. These policies undermine efforts to secure our southern border, and they encourage illegal immigration into our country. President Biden has signaled that when it comes to immigration that violates our laws, the United States is open for business. Speaker Pelosi and House Democrats are doubling down on that position this very week. They're working to pass several mass amnesty bills that contain no provision related to securing the border. It turns out people are finally paying attention. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection recently confirmed that it had encountered over 100,000 migrants attempting to cross the southern border in February, the first full month of this new administration. That's the highest total for the month of February since 2006. News report, Democrat blaming Trump's policies for this situation that we're in. The number of single adults encountered at the southern border was up 175% compared to last February. The number of family units was up 170%, and the number of unaccompanied alien children was up 171%. The Department of Health and Human Services, which is responsible for the care of unaccompanied children after they arrive in the United States, had 7,300 unaccompanied children referrals in February. That's the highest number of February referrals in the history of the program. As of late last week, Health and Human Services had over 8,500 unaccompanied children in its facilities. As of this past weekend, more than 4,200 were being held by the Customs and Border Patrol holding facilities, with nearly 3,000 being held past the legal limit of 72 hours. These are the kids in cages, who many of our Democratic colleagues were so outraged about a few years ago, blaming Trump even though the so-called cages were created in the Obama administration, just being reused again. Curiously, we're not seeing nearly as much outrage now as we saw during the Trump episode. Where is our fair and balanced press today? Reports emerged late last week that one Border Patrol facility in Texas was operating at 729% of pandemic capacity. Many minors who had been in custody for over 5 days were reportedly only able to shower once. If this was happening during the Trump administration, our Democratic colleagues would be expressing their anger and their outrage on any media outlet that they could find. But because this crisis is happening as a result of President Biden's policies, we have mostly silence. President Biden's border crisis reaches beyond just these staggering numbers that I have given you. First, it's a humanitarian tragedy, a crisis. The Biden administration's policies has incentivized unaccompanied children and family units to make a very incredibly dangerous trip to our southern borders. On March the 10th, Reuters reported that the Mexican government is worried that the Biden administration asylum policies, quote, are stoking illegal immigration and creating business for organized crime, end of quote, from the Mexican government, reported by Reuters. There is no doubt that cartels are profiting greatly from this trafficking. One Mexican official was quoted as saying, quote, migrants have become a commodity, end of quote. The article went on to discuss how gangs are diversifying methods of smuggling and how smugglers are advising migrants on how to more easily apply for asylum in the United States, including by bringing children. It also described how higher concentrations of migrants in areas near the U.S.-Mexican border have encouraged gangs to recruit some migrants as drug mules and to kidnap other migrants for what? For money. This is a tragedy, and it's a tragedy created in just recent weeks by changes of policies at the border by this new administration. Second, President Biden's border crisis presents a public health threat in the middle of a pandemic. Recent reports have indicated that the administration plans to turn 2 Texas facilities where migrant family units are being held into rapid processing centers. The plan is to hold the family units for 3 days or less. It is unclear if all of these migrants are being tested for COVID-19, when they're being tested, how they're being tested, and how they're being handled if they test positively. Recent media reports also indicate that 100 undocumented immigrants who were released by Department of Homeland Security into the United States later tested positive for the virus. In these times, as we're all concerned about the pandemic, it can't be acceptable. Finally, President Biden's border crisis has created a situation that is overwhelming the men and women who work to protect our borders. It's straining the resources of agencies that must cope with the results of this administration's misguided immigration policies. One of the most important responsibilities of the federal government and any presidential administration, Republican or Democrat, is to enforce our immigration laws in ways that ensure the sovereignty of our borders, protects the American people, and lastly, discourages illegal immigration. It's clear that this administration has failed to live up to this responsibility. I hope that President Biden changes the course and begins to work with Congress in a bipartisan way to secure our borders and at the same time reform our laws in ways that discourage this violation of our immigration laws by people just willy-nilly crossing the border, even being invited here. If they instead continue on their present course, this will be just the first of many border surges to come over the next 4 years. What we need is to keep our doors open, as we have done for decades with legal immigrants, and do everything we can to discourage people to come here in violation of our laws. I yield the floor. I suggest